Oh my God, Emma's breath hitched as she stood frozen at the entrance to the grand wedding hall. The music was playing softly in the background, the guests were chatting and laughing, and the whole atmosphere was one of celebration. But something was completely out of place. Right in front of her, blocking her path to the aisle, stood Max, the golden retriever who had been her best friend for years. Max wasn't moving. He wasn't excited, as he usually was around people. His tail wasn't wagging. Instead, he stood still, eyes locked on her, a sense of urgency in them that she couldn't ignore. "Max, what are you doing?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling. Her heart began to race. She was supposed to walk down the aisle in just a few minutes, but her dog was preventing her from even stepping inside. He didn't move, though. He stood there, like a silent guardian, looking up at her with those soulful eyes, his body tense, and his breathing irregular. Something was wrong. A few guests had started to peer out from the wedding hall, their smiles fading as they noticed the tension in the air. One of the bridesmaids, her face painted with concern, popped her head out from behind the door. "Emma, it's time. Everyone's waiting for you. What's going on?" Emma tried to step forward, to make her way past Max, but he wouldn't let her. His body moved slightly in front of her as if trying to block her from going any further. He looked at her with that same intense gaze, and it made Emma's heart skip a beat. "Max," she whispered softly, kneeling down beside him. Her fingers gently ran through his fur, but instead of the usual excited nudge or tail wag, he flinched, his body stiffening under her touch. There was something about the way he was behaving that made Emma's stomach churn with unease. She looked up at the bridesmaid, her eyes wide with worry. I can't go in," Emma muttered, still petting Max's head. "There's something wrong with him." The bridesmaid stepped closer, her brow furrowed. "Is everything okay, Emma? We need to start the ceremony. Tom's waiting." But Emma wasn't listening anymore. She was focused entirely on Maximum. There was an ache in her heart, a quiet voice telling her that something was seriously wrong. Max had always been there for her, through every happy moment and every hard time. But today, on her wedding day, he was trying to stop her from walking down the aisle. The wedding, her dream wedding, felt suddenly so insignificant in that moment. Something was pulling at her heart, telling her she couldn't just ignore Maximum. She couldn't leave him alone with whatever was happening to him. "Max, please," Emma whispered, but he didn't move. Instead, his body seemed to sink lower to the floor, and she saw it, his legs were shaking, his body trembling slightly. A chill ran through her as she realized just how weak he was. Her hand rested on his side, and she could feel the irregularity of his breathing. This wasn't just an act of protest, not just him being stubborn. This was something deeper, something more frightening than she could understand. "Max, what's happening to you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Her heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to go to Tom, she wanted to walk down the aisle, but everything inside her screamed that this was more important. She needed to focus on Maximum. There was something wrong with him, and she was the only one who could help him. Her thoughts were interrupted by another call from inside the hall. The guests were waiting. Her wedding, the one she had dreamed of, was happening without her. But all Emma could think about was Max and the pain she could see in his eyes. Tears filled her eyes as she knelt beside him, stroking his fur. "Max, please tell me what's wrong," she whispered, but he didn't respond. Instead, he let out a soft whimper and nudged his head into her lap, seeking comfort in a way that only made Emma's heart break more. She wanted to be the strong one, to stand up and walk down the aisle with a smile on her face. But how could she do that knowing that her best friend was in pain? How could she go forward with a ceremony when the one constant in her life was suffering right in front of her? In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the wedding. Not the guests. Only Max. Emma's hand shook as she stroked Max's fur, trying to reassure herself more than him. He had always been the one who comforted her during difficult times, and now, in this heartbreaking moment, it was her turn to return that love and care. But the fear in her chest grew stronger with each passing second. Max's breathing was getting more labored, his chest rising and falling unevenly. Something was terribly wrong. "Max," Emma whispered again, this time her voice trembling. Her mind raced as she tried to think of what she could do. Could she call a vet? Was this something serious? Why had he been hiding it all along? The room around her seemed to blur, the noise from the wedding hall fading into the background. All Emma could focus on was Max, his soft whimpers, his pleading eyes, and the way his body seemed to grow weaker by the second. She felt utterly helpless. Tears welled up in her eyes again, and she wiped them away quickly, her heart pounding in her chest. She had been so wrapped up in wedding preparations, in making everything perfect for the big day, that she hadn't noticed how much Max had been struggling. She had been so focused on the future, on her new life with Tom, that she had neglected the most important constant in her life, her dog, her loyal companion, who had always been there for her. Max had never been one to show weakness, never one to let on if something was wrong. But now, as she held him, she realized how many signs she must have missed. The way he had slowed down in the past few weeks, the way he avoided his usual runs and long walks, the way he had become more withdrawn. But she had been too consumed by the whirlwind of wedding planning to notice. "I'm so sorry, Max," she whispered, her voice breaking. She could feel the weight of her guilt pressing on her chest, suffocating her. How could she have missed this? How could she have been so blind to the one person who had been there for her through everything? Max's tail, which had once wagged furiously at the slightest sign of affection, now lay limp at his side. His eyes, usually full of life and energy, were dull and clouded. He was trying so hard to comfort her, but Emma could feel it. He was getting weaker, and he was running out of time. She looked up at the bridesmaid, who had been standing a few feet away, watching with concern. "He needs help. We need to get him to a vet, now," Emma said urgently, her voice raw. The bridesmaid nodded quickly, her face pale with worry. "I'll get someone to call an ambulance. Just stay with him, Emma. He's going to be okay." But Emma didn't believe it. She could feel the coldness in Max's body growing stronger, and the fear in her heart intensified. She didn't know what was happening, but she knew one thing for sure: she couldn't leave him. Not now. Not when he needed her most. Max gave another soft whimper, and Emma leaned down to kiss his head, her heart breaking all over again. "Please don't leave me, Maximum. I need you." The sound of the wedding guests inside the hall seemed distant now. The music that had once felt so fitting for this joyful occasion now felt like a cruel reminder of everything that was slipping away. Emma had been so focused on the wedding, on the perfect day, and now all she wanted was to save Max. As she held him, she could feel the weight of the situation growing heavier. He was her family, her comfort, her protector. And now, on the day that was supposed to mark the beginning of a new chapter in her life, she was being forced to face the reality of losing him. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, but she ignored it. Another message from Tom. "Emma, where are you? Please come back. Everyone is waiting for you. Are you okay?" She couldn't even bring herself to open the message. What was she supposed to say? "I can't come back. Max needs me?" How could she explain that her best friend, the one who had been with her through everything, was fighting for his life, while she was expected to walk down the aisle as if nothing had changed? She kissed Max's head again, her tears soaking into his fur. "Please don't leave me, Maximum. Please," she whispered, her voice filled with a mixture of desperation and love. Max's breathing was becoming even more erratic, and Emma's heart shattered. This wasn't just about the wedding. It was about Max, her companion, the one who had always been by her side. And right now, he needed her more than anyone else. "Max, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere," she promised softly. She wasn't sure if he could hear her or if he even had the strength to understand, but in that moment, she had to believe that he did. But then, something in Max's eyes changed. The desperation, the urgency, it was still there, but now, his gaze softened, and it felt like he was trying to say something to her, something important. Emma leaned closer, brushing his fur back from his face. For a brief moment, it felt as though he was telling her it was okay, that he had accepted whatever was happening. But that didn't mean Emma was ready to let him go. She wasn't ready for this goodbye. "Please don't leave me alone, Max," she whispered again, her heart heavy with the weight of the truth she didn't want to face. And then, in that quiet, peaceful moment, Max let out a final, soft whimper, and Emma knew. She knew he wasn't going to make it. The silence that followed Max's whimper was deafening. Emma held him tighter, her body trembling as the weight of the moment settled over her like a dark cloud. Her fingers gently stroked his fur, but there was no response this time. No gentle nudge, no comforting look from those eyes that had seen her through so much. Max had always been there, when she was happy, when she was sad, when she was heartbroken, but now, it was like he was slipping away from her, leaving her in a world that felt far too empty without him. Her mind was in a haze. She had dreamed of this day for so long, envisioned walking down the aisle, her heart full of love for Tom, the man she was about to marry. But none of that mattered now. None of the carefully planned details of her wedding, the flowers, the guests, the cake, it all seemed so trivial in the face of this overwhelming grief. "Max," Emma whispered again, her voice cracking with emotion. "I'm so sorry. I should have known. I should have been there for you more." She felt the tight grip of guilt wrap around her chest, squeezing the air from her lungs. Max had always been the one constant in her life. When her parents had divorced, when friends had come and gone, Max had never wavered. He had loved her unconditionally, always there, always loyal. And now, she was failing him when he needed her most. Her hands shook as she checked his pulse, feeling for any sign of life. The faint beat under her fingers gave her a small sense of hope, but it was so weak, so fragile. She could feel him fading, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The sound of footsteps approaching made her glance up. It was the bridesmaid again, her expression a mix of concern and confusion. "Emma, what's happening?" she asked gently, stepping closer. "You need to get back to the hall. They're all waiting for you. Tom's really worried." Emma shook her head, tears streaming down her face as she hugged Max closer to her chest. I can't leave him," she managed to choke out. He's not okay. I can't just walk away from him." The bridesmaid hesitated, glancing back at the wedding hall, and then back at Emma with a deep, empathetic look. "I understand, Emma. I know how much he means to you." She paused, her voice softening. "But maybe Max knows how much you love him. Maybe he knows that you'll be okay. You don't have to be alone in this, you know." Emma closed her eyes, squeezing her dog's body against hers as though she could somehow hold on to him forever. I can't say goodbye." The bridesmaid knelt beside her, offering a comforting hand on her shoulder. "It's okay to say goodbye, Emma. It's okay to let him go when it's time. He's had a wonderful life with you. You've given him all the love he ever needed. Don't carry this guilt with you." Emma's chest tightened, her heart heavy with the grief that felt like it was suffocating her. How could she be expected to let go of Max? The thought of losing him was unimaginable. But in that moment, she realized she couldn't stop it. No matter how much she wished she could turn back time and be there for him more, there was no way to undo what was happening. Max had been with her through everything, the happy moments, the hard days, and even the loneliness. He had been her rock, her comfort, and now he needed her to let him go, to allow him to rest. It was the most selfless thing she could do for him. Emma kissed the top of his head, her tears mingling with his soft fur. "I love you, Maximum. I always will. You've been my best friend, my family. Thank you for everything." For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to release the overwhelming weight of guilt. It wasn't her fault. Max had loved her with all his heart, and she had loved him the same. This wasn't about failing him, it was about honoring the bond they shared. As she gently laid him down on the bench beside her, she stood up, her legs unsteady. She wiped her tears away with the back of her hand, taking a deep breath. It was time to say goodbye. But it wasn't forever. Max would live on in her heart, in the memories they had shared. "Thank you, Max," she whispered one last time, her voice breaking as she kissed his head softly. "You'll never be forgotten." She stood there for a moment longer, allowing herself to feel the love that had filled her life because of Maximum. Then, with one final look, she turned and walked slowly back toward the wedding hall. She knew she had to face what was coming. She had to be strong, for Max, and for herself. She was no longer just a bride waiting to walk down the aisle. She was a woman who had just said goodbye to a piece of her heart. And now, she had to figure out how to keep going without him by her side. As Emma walked back into the wedding hall, the energy around her felt like a distant echo. The vibrant chatter of the guests, the soft clinking of glasses, and the sweet melodies of the string quartet all seemed to fade into the background. Her legs felt heavy, as if the weight of her heart was pulling her down with every step she took. The bride who had once been filled with excitement, with joy and anticipation, now felt like a stranger in her own skin. The guests were seated, their eyes on the aisle, waiting for her to make her grand entrance. The ceremony had already been delayed enough, and the expectant murmurs started to grow. Emma could feel the pressure building as she stood by the door, staring at the rows of people all gathered for her wedding. But all she could think about was Max. Her best friend, her loyal companion, was still lying in the same spot, in the cold, empty hallway. The realization struck her again, harder this time. She had left him. She had walked away from him at the moment he needed her the most. And now, there was no turning back. He was gone, and there was no way to undo it. A voice from behind her startled her out of her thoughts. "Emma," it was Tom, standing at the edge of the hall. His eyes widened when he saw her, his face softening with concern. "What's going on? Why did you leave?" Emma didn't know what to say. The words caught in her throat, a lump of sorrow and confusion lodged deep within. She didn't have an answer. She didn't have a way to explain the storm that had just passed through her life. I couldn't," Emma managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. She didn't have the strength to explain it all. Not now. Not when it felt like her world had been ripped apart. Tom stepped forward, reaching out for her, his hand warm and gentle on her arm. "Emma, I don't understand. You're scaring me. What's happening?" His eyes were filled with worry, but there was something else, something Emma couldn't place. Was it disappointment? Confusion? She couldn't tell. Her voice faltered again. She looked up at him, her eyes red-rimmed from crying, but it wasn't the tears that made her voice waver. It was the realization that everything she had imagined about this day, the perfect wedding, the beautiful life ahead with Tom, felt like a dream that was slipping further away. She had been so consumed with the future, with the idea of their new life together, that she hadn't seen what was right in front of her. "Max," she finally said, the word barely escaping her lips. "Max, he's gone, Tom. My dog, he's gone." Tom's face fell, his eyes softening with understanding. "Oh, Emma," he whispered, stepping closer. "I'm so sorry." His voice was full of empathy, but there was an undertone of something Emma couldn't quite understand. She wanted to feel comforted, but all she could feel was the distance growing between them. "He's been so sick," Emma continued, her voice breaking. "I didn't see it. I didn't realize how much he was struggling. I couldn't let him go. Not today. Not when everything was supposed to be perfect." Her voice trailed off, lost in the whirlwind of emotion that overtook her. Tom stood there for a moment, his hands in his pockets, his eyes searching Emma's face. He looked like he was thinking carefully, weighing his next words. Finally, he sighed and said, "Emma, I get that Max was important to you. He's been your best friend, your family. But you need to understand that today is supposed to be about us. It's supposed to be about our future together." Emma felt a pang of something sharp inside her chest. His words stung. She hadn't expected him to say it like that. She thought he would understand, that he would comfort her, not remind her of the expectations that had been set for this day. Wasn't this supposed to be the one person who stood by her, no matter what? But in that moment, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that Tom didn't fully understand what Max had meant to her. To Emma, Max wasn't just a dog. He was a part of her. A constant. A safe place in a world that could sometimes feel so uncertain. "I'm sorry, Tom. I need a moment. I can't do this. Not today. Not without Maximum." Emma's voice cracked again, and she wiped her face with her sleeve. Tom seemed to hesitate, his face softening. "I understand that you're hurting, Emma. I really do. But this wedding, it's important to us. It's the start of our lives together. Don't you think it's worth fighting for?" Emma took a deep breath, her hands shaking as she looked down at the floor. She wasn't sure what she was supposed to do. Everything felt like it was unraveling, and she was stuck in the middle, trying to hold on to the pieces. For a long moment, there was only silence. She could feel Tom's eyes on her, but she couldn't look up. She didn't want to see the disappointment there. The confusion. She wasn't sure if they could go forward after this, after everything that had happened. How could she be the bride in a dream wedding when her heart was breaking for the one thing that had always been there for her? Emma whispered, looking up at him, her voice barely audible. "I don't know what to do anymore." The room around Emma seemed to close in on her. The air felt thick, her breath shallow, her heart racing as the reality of the situation pressed down on her chest. She looked around the hall, where the wedding guests were waiting, unaware of the turmoil unfolding just outside. Their laughter, their chatter, the joy that was supposed to fill this day, now felt so distant, so foreign. Tom's hand rested on her arm, but his touch no longer brought comfort. It felt like a weight, like a reminder of all the expectations, all the things that she was supposed to be doing in that moment. She should have been excited, happy, eager to step into the future with him. But all she could think about was Max, her best friend, her protector, the one who had loved her unconditionally, and she had left him in the hallway. The guilt consumed her. "Emma, we can't keep doing this," Tom said, his voice steady but tinged with frustration. He seemed to be trying to reach her, but the divide between them felt too wide. "You can't just shut down like this. This is our wedding day. We've worked so hard for this, and now you're letting everything slip away." Emma winced, the words cutting through her like glass. She didn't want to hear them. She didn't want to hear about the wedding, the perfect future, when all she could think about was the life she'd almost lost. "I don't care about the wedding, Tom," she whispered, her voice barely above a whisper, though the weight of her words hit like a sledgehammer. "Not without Maximum." Tom stared at her, his expression unreadable for a moment. His brows furrowed, and he opened his mouth to say something, but then stopped himself. He took a deep breath, as if trying to compose himself, before speaking again, his voice softer this time. "I understand that Max meant the world to you, but this is about us. This is the moment we've been waiting for. If you really want to spend your life with me, we need to be able to move forward, together." Emma's chest tightened as she fought back another wave of tears. She felt torn, pulled in so many different directions. She wanted to be the bride. She wanted to walk down the aisle with a heart full of hope, ready to build a future with Tom. But she couldn't leave Max behind. She couldn't leave him without saying goodbye. She looked up at him, searching his eyes for any hint of understanding, any sign that he saw how much this was breaking her. But all she saw was a man who was frustrated, who couldn't grasp the depth of her pain. Maybe he never would. Maybe no one could understand the bond she shared with Max. "I'm sorry, Tom," Emma said quietly, her voice shaking. "I don't know if I'm ready for this, or for us, not today. The silence between them stretched on, long and uncomfortable. Emma could feel the tension crackling in the air. Tom stood there, his jaw clenched, his fists clenched at his sides. He looked like he was holding back something, anger, hurt, confusion, Emma couldn't tell. But it didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the gnawing emptiness inside her, the unbearable weight of the loss she had just experienced. She stepped away from him, her legs unsteady, as if the ground beneath her had turned to quicksand. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't stay in that moment any longer. The walls of the wedding hall felt like they were closing in on her, and the voices of the guests, the chatter, the music, all felt like a distant memory. Without looking back, she walked out of the hall, her footsteps echoing in the corridor. She needed air. She needed space. She needed to figure out what to do, how to make sense of everything. But before she could even reach the doors, a voice called out to her from behind. "Emma, wait." It was Tom. His voice was softer now, quieter, almost pleading. He was following her, and she could hear the hesitation in his steps, as if he wasn't sure if he should continue after her. She stopped but didn't turn around. Her eyes were fixed on the doors ahead, on the world beyond the wedding hall, the world that now seemed so empty, so cold. "Emma," Tom's voice came again, this time closer, his hand gently touching her shoulder. "I'm sorry. I should have been more understanding. I know Max meant the world to you." Emma turned slowly to face him, her eyes red and puffy from crying. "It's too late, Tom. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can be the person you need me to be." The silence stretched between them again. For a moment, there was only the soft sound of her ragged breaths, the weight of the moment hanging in the air. Maybe this isn't the right time for us, Emma," Tom said quietly, his voice tinged with sadness. "Maybe we're not on the same page anymore. You need space to grieve, and I need to figure out if we can still have a future after everything that's happened." The words stung more than she expected. Emma's heart twisted painfully, but she couldn't bring herself to respond. She had spent so long focusing on the future, on the wedding, on the idea of starting a life with Tom, but now, all she could think about was the loss she had just suffered, and the emptiness that had crept into her life. Tom's eyes softened as he took a step back. "I'm sorry, Emma. I truly am. But I think we need time apart. We both do." And with that, he turned and walked away. Emma stood there for a long moment, staring at the door in front of her, her heart heavy with the weight of his words. For the first time in a long while, she was alone, really alone, with only the ghost of her past to keep her company. The moments that followed felt like an eternity to Emma. She stood in the hallway, staring at the door Tom had just walked through, unsure of what to do next. The sound of his footsteps faded away, leaving her standing in silence, with only the soft hum of the wedding hall echoing in the distance. The hallway was cold, the reality of the situation sinking in like ice through her veins. For the first time, Emma felt completely disconnected from everything around her. She had thought the wedding was the start of something beautiful, a new chapter of her life with Tom, but now it felt like the end of something. Her life, the one she had carefully imagined, had suddenly splintered, and she had no idea how to put the pieces back together. She walked slowly, aimlessly, her feet carrying her without any real destination. She didn't care where she was going. The grand ballroom, the white dresses, the wedding cake, it all felt like a distant memory, an illusion that she had once hoped for but now couldn't reach. Her mind kept drifting back to Max, to the way he had looked at her before she left him. His eyes had held so much love, so much trust. How could she have left him? How could she have let a day that was supposed to be about love and commitment to someone else overshadow her devotion to him? With each step, the weight of her emotions grew heavier. Max had always been her constant, her rock. And now, she was standing on the precipice of losing that. Without thinking, Emma found herself standing by the back door of the hall, staring out at the small garden beyond. The air was cold against her skin, but it was a welcome chill, a distraction from the chaos in her heart. She drew in a shaky breath, trying to steady herself. She needed something to ground her. Something real. But there was nothing left. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she pulled it out reflexively, hoping for a message, a call, something that could ease the crushing isolation she felt. But it was just a message from one of the wedding coordinators. They were checking on her, asking when she would be ready to walk down the aisle. Emma stared at the screen for a long moment. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as if trying to figure out how to respond. The words, the polite, courteous response expected of her, seemed so meaningless in the face of everything she had just experienced. How could she continue with the wedding? How could she walk down that aisle when her heart was broken? Before she could type a response, a voice interrupted her thoughts. "Emma?" She turned quickly, startled to see her mother standing in the doorway, her face a mask of concern. Emma hadn't seen her in the frenzy of the morning, and her mother's appearance now was a reminder of everything she had left behind. "Mom?" Emma whispered, her voice hoarse, barely a sound. Her mother's eyes softened as she approached, stepping toward Emma slowly, her arms open as if to comfort her. "What's happening? Where's Tom? Why didn't you come back inside?" Emma swallowed, the lump in her throat rising again. I can't, Mom. I can't do this. I can't marry him. Not today. Not with everything that's happened." Her mother's face fell, but she didn't say anything right away. She just stood there, silent, her hands wringing together as if unsure how to offer comfort. "You need to talk to him, Emma," her mother said gently, her voice steady but filled with worry. "Tom is a good man. He loves you. You need to figure this out, sweetie. This wedding, everything you've planned, it's not just about you and Maximum. It's about your future." Emma shook her head, her eyes brimming with fresh tears. "I don't know what my future is anymore. I thought it was with him. I thought it was with Tom, but I can't even think straight. I don't know what to do." Her mother's expression softened, and she reached out to take Emma's hands in hers. "I know you're hurting, sweetie. But you can't let grief take away your future. You can't let this day define everything that's ahead of you. Max was part of your past, but you need to look forward. Tom is waiting for you. He wants you." "I can't leave Max," Emma replied quietly, her voice breaking. "He was always there for me, Mom. And I wasn't there for him when he needed me. How can I walk down the aisle knowing that I didn't do everything I could for him?" Her mother's gaze softened, but there was a strength in her voice. "I know how much Max meant to you, and he'll always be a part of you. But Emma, he wouldn't want you to give up on everything else. He would want you to find happiness. You deserve that." Emma stood still for a moment, the weight of her mother's words sinking in. She knew her mother was right. Max had always wanted what was best for her. He had never wanted her to be stuck in the past. But that didn't mean it would be easy to move forward. It felt impossible, like she was being torn in two. Finally, she looked up at her mother, her voice barely above a whisper. "But how do I do it, Mom? How do I move on when I feel like I've lost everything?" Her mother smiled softly and pulled her into a hug, holding her tightly. "You don't move on. You move forward. You take each step as it comes. One step at a time. And you allow yourself to heal. You deserve that." Emma nodded slowly, the tears flowing freely now. She didn't know if she was ready to face the future, but she knew that her mother was right. It was time to move forward. Not just for Tom, but for herself. For Max. And with a deep breath, she let go of the past, just for a moment, and turned back toward the wedding hall. As Emma stood at the edge of the garden, wiping her tears away, she realized something. The wedding hall, with all its grandeur and noise, felt like a place she didn't belong anymore. It was filled with laughter, joy, and expectations. But her heart felt heavy, weighed down by the thoughts of Max and the life she'd been building with Tom, two things that now seemed to be pulling her in opposite directions. Her mother's words echoed in her ears, "You don't move on. You move forward." Emma wasn't sure she was ready for that, but she knew deep down that she couldn't stay in this moment forever. She had to make a choice, even if she didn't know what that choice would be. She walked back into the hall, her steps hesitant but determined. She could hear the chatter of the guests growing louder as she approached the grand doors. The thought of walking into that room, to face everyone waiting for her, made her stomach twist. She wasn't sure if she could do it, but she knew she had to. As she reached the threshold, she paused for a moment, her hand resting on the doorframe. Her mind raced. She thought of Max again. The way he had looked at her, trusting her to make the right decision. She wished he were there, by her side, to give her some sign, some reassurance. But he wasn't. It was just her now. And Tom. "Emma." She turned at the sound of his voice, her heart skipping a beat. Tom was standing a few feet away, his eyes tired, but there was something softer in his gaze now. He looked as if he'd been waiting for her, hoping she would come back, hoping she would say something, anything. "I didn't mean what I said earlier," Tom continued, his voice almost pleading. I was frustrated. I didn't understand what you were going through. But I do now. I know how much Max meant to you, and I can't imagine how hard this is." Emma swallowed, fighting the tears that threatened to spill over again. "I'm sorry, Tom. I didn't mean to run away. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to disappoint you." "You haven't disappointed me," Tom said quietly, taking a few steps closer. "I just want you to be happy. I want us to be happy. And I want to support you, no matter what." She looked into his eyes, searching for the love and understanding she had once felt. But now, there was a hesitation, a distance between them that hadn't been there before. She couldn't ignore it. The walls she had built up around herself, around her emotions, had started to crumble, and she wasn't sure if she could rebuild them. "I'm not sure I can be the person you want me to be, Tom," Emma said, her voice breaking. "Not today. I don't even know who I am right now. Max. He was everything to me. And I can't just leave that behind. Not so easily." Tom nodded, his face softening. I know it's hard. I can't pretend to understand the bond you had with Max, but I know he was your world. And I want to be there for you, through this. I don't want to lose you." A silence fell between them, heavy and suffocating. Emma felt like she was drowning in it. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know what to feel. "I think," Emma began, hesitating, "I think I need some time, Tom. Time to figure things out. I can't promise you anything right now. But I can't go forward with this wedding, not today. Not like this." Tom's expression faltered, but he nodded slowly, as if he had expected it. "I understand," he said quietly, his voice carrying an edge of sadness. "I'll give you the time you need. But don't shut me out, Emma. I'm here for you. Whenever you're ready." Emma bit her lip, her heart aching at the distance growing between them. She had wanted this day, this wedding, to be the start of a new chapter. But now, it felt like a closing chapter. And she wasn't sure how to turn the page. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. I don't know where to go from here." Tom stepped back, giving her space, his eyes still locked on hers. "I'll be waiting. Whenever you're ready to talk, to figure this out, I'll be here." With that, he turned and walked away, his footsteps soft against the polished floor. Emma watched him go, her heart heavy with the weight of the decision she had just made. She had let him go, just like she had let Max go, but for different reasons. One had been about loss, the other about uncertainty. She wasn't ready to face the world yet. She wasn't ready to make a choice, to decide what her future looked like. But she knew that she had to. Because in the end, it wasn't just about Max, or Tom, or the wedding. It was about her. And she needed to find her own way through this, no matter how painful it was. Emma turned her back to the wedding hall, the doors closing softly behind her. She didn't know what was next, but she knew she had to face it alone. For now, at least. She needed to heal. And maybe, just maybe, she would learn how to love again. As Emma stood outside the wedding hall, the cool breeze against her skin felt like a small comfort. It was a moment of solitude she hadn't realized she needed until now. The world seemed to move on without her, but for the first time that day, she didn't feel the weight of everyone's expectations on her shoulders. It was just her, alone in her thoughts, with the raw emotions she had been trying to suppress for so long. She walked a few steps, the sound of her heels clicking against the pavement, but it didn't matter. The wedding guests were still inside, waiting for her, but she wasn't ready to return to that world. She wasn't ready to be the bride, the woman everyone expected her to be, when her heart was still lost in the past. Max had been her constant. The one who had always been there, no questions asked. Even when things were difficult, when her heart was broken or when life felt uncertain, Max had been by her side. He had loved her without reservation, without hesitation. He was her companion, her friend, her family. But now, he was gone, and she was standing at the crossroads of her life. She didn't know where to go from here. The pain of losing Max was still fresh, sharp, and all-encompassing. It felt as though a piece of her soul had been ripped away, and she wasn't sure how to function without that part of her. She sank down onto a nearby bench, her hands resting on her lap as she tried to gather her thoughts. She couldn't think clearly. Every time she closed her eyes, all she saw was Max's face, his tail wagging, his eyes full of trust and devotion. She couldn't shake the image of him, the way he had looked at her when she left him in the hallway. It was then that she heard the sound of footsteps behind her. She didn't turn around, not at first, because in that moment, she didn't want anyone to disturb her. She needed to be alone with her thoughts, to process the weight of everything that had happened. But the steps grew closer, and soon, a voice called out her name. "Emma?" Her heart skipped a beat. She recognized the voice immediately. It was Tom. She stood up slowly, her emotions still raw, and turned to face him. He looked tired, worn down, but there was something else in his eyes. Concern. Love. He had come after her, even though she had told him she wasn't ready. "Tom," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "What are you doing here?" "I couldn't just leave you like that," Tom replied softly, his eyes filled with a mixture of worry and something deeper, something more understanding. "I had to come find you. I can't imagine how much pain you're in right now, but I want you to know something. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here for you, Emma. Whatever you decide, whatever you need, I'm here." Emma felt a wave of emotion rise within her. She wanted to scream, to cry, to tell him everything she was feeling, but the words didn't come. She just stood there, her chest tight, as if her heart had been locked inside a cage she couldn't open. Emma started, but she didn't know how to finish. What could she say? She had been so certain about everything, about her future, her relationship with him. But now, in the face of this loss, this uncertainty, all of that seemed so distant, so impossible. "You don't have to say anything, Emma," Tom said gently, taking a step closer. "I know this is hard. I know you're hurting. But please, let me help you through it. We can work through this together." She shook her head, her hands pressed against her chest as if trying to hold herself together. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can be the person you need me to be. I don't even know who I am anymore. Tom reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. His touch was warm, grounding, and for a moment, Emma let herself lean into it. You don't have to have all the answers right now, Emma. You don't have to be anyone other than who you are. And I'll be here with you while you figure it out. I'm not asking you to forget Max, or to move on from him, or to just get over everything. But I am asking you to give us a chance, to give yourself a chance to heal. Emma closed her eyes for a moment, the tears she had been holding back finally spilling over. She felt so torn, so lost. She didn't know how to move forward when her heart was still so heavy. But the more she listened to Tom's words, the more she realized something. He wasn't asking her to erase her past. He wasn't asking her to forget Maximum. He was asking her to give herself the chance to heal, to find peace again. I don't know if I'm ready for that, Emma whispered, wiping the tears from her cheeks. I don't know if I can love again, not after everything I've lost. Tom gave her a small, understanding smile. It's okay. You don't have to have all the answers right now. But when you're ready, I'll be here. Emma took a deep breath, her heart still aching but a little lighter than before. Maybe she wasn't ready to make a decision. Maybe she didn't know what the future held. But one thing was clear, she couldn't keep running away. She had to face her grief. She had to face her future. And, for the first time in a long while, Emma wasn't sure what was ahead, but she was willing to take the first step toward healing. Not for Tom, not for the wedding, but for herself. I'll try, she whispered. I'll try. The days that followed the wedding were a blur for Emma. She hadn't returned to the hall after the conversation with Tom. Instead, she had taken a few days to herself, retreating into the quiet comfort of her home. It felt strange, almost surreal. The house, which had once felt full of warmth and love, now seemed too empty, too quiet. Max's absence was deafening. She had expected to feel relief after stepping away from everything, the wedding, the pressure, the expectations, but instead, she felt more lost than ever. The grief was still raw, clinging to her like a heavy cloak that she couldn't shake off. Every room she entered reminded her of Max's absence. His bed was still by the door, his toys scattered across the living room, and every corner seemed to echo with the memories of his presence. But it wasn't just Max that she was grieving, it was also the life she had thought she would have with Tom. She had wanted that life so badly, a future that was so clear in her mind. Yet, everything had changed in an instant, and now, she was left standing on the edge of a future she wasn't sure she was ready to face. Every time her phone buzzed, her heart would race. It was always Tom, sending her messages, asking how she was doing, telling her he was thinking of her. He was patient, giving her the space she had asked for, but his messages were a reminder of how much she had left behind. How much she had to figure out. She would read each message, her heart aching with confusion. Part of her wanted to respond, wanted to tell him that she was okay, that she could handle it, that they could go back to what they had before. But another part of her knew that wasn't true. She wasn't okay. She didn't know how to be okay. But then, one day, as she sat on the couch, staring blankly at the TV that wasn't even on, something shifted. She looked down at the small collar that had been lying on the coffee table for days, the one Max had worn. It was just a simple leather collar, but to her, it meant everything. She reached for it slowly, her fingers brushing against the soft material, and something broke inside of her. The dam she had been holding up for so long finally cracked, and she let the tears flow freely. She let herself grieve, fully and without reservation. For Maximum. For the love she had lost. For the pieces of herself that she didn't know how to find again. And as she cried, she realized something. She wasn't going to get over this pain overnight. Healing wasn't something that could be rushed. She needed time to remember who she was before everything got so complicated, before the wedding and the choices and the heartache took over her life. She needed to forgive herself for not being perfect, for not knowing the right answers. It was okay to hurt. It was okay to take her time. After a while, Emma stood up, wiping her eyes. She took a deep breath and walked over to the window. The sun was starting to set, casting a soft golden light over the city. It was a small, quiet moment, but it was enough. For the first time in days, Emma felt a flicker of hope. She wasn't ready to return to the wedding or to Tom. She wasn't ready to face the world yet. But she was starting to realize that it wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about finding a way to move forward without leaving everything behind. It wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be quick. But as she stood there, looking out at the world outside, she knew that she was taking the first step toward healing. The first step toward finding herself again. Days turned into weeks, and Emma slowly started to rebuild her routine. It wasn't easy, and at times it felt like she was moving through the motions, like a ghost of the person she used to be. But the time she had taken for herself, those quiet days spent in the safety of her home, had begun to work their magic. She still felt the weight of her loss, but little by little, the sharp edges of her grief were softening. She went through the motions, going for walks in the park, making small meals for herself, and reading a book here and there, but it wasn't the same. There was no excitement in it, no joy. Her heart still ached for Maximum. And, strangely, it also ached for Tom. She had told herself that the wedding, the future they had planned, was no longer something she could hold on to. But the longer she stayed in her own thoughts, the more she realized how much she missed him. Tom had continued to message her, each text filled with patience, concern, and love. He hadn't pressured her to make any decisions. He simply let her know that he was there for her, that he was waiting. And as the days passed, Emma couldn't help but wonder, was she pushing him away because she was still grieving Max? Or was it because she feared the future, the unknown that lay ahead? One evening, as she was sitting by the window, lost in her thoughts, the sound of her phone buzzing broke the silence. She glanced down. It was Tom. "Hey, Emma," the message began, "I know you're taking your time, and I don't want to rush you. But I miss you. I miss us. I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. No pressure. I promise." Emma stared at the message for a long time, her finger hovering over the reply button. Her heart felt like it was in a constant tug-of-war. Part of her wanted to respond, to tell him everything she had been feeling. Part of her wanted to reach out to him, to tell him she was ready, that she was ready to try again. But the other part of her still felt so lost, so unsure. What did she even want anymore? She took a deep breath and began typing, the words flowing out of her before she could stop them. "I've been thinking a lot, Tom. About us, about everything. And I think I need to tell you something. I don't know if I'm ready for us to go back to where we were before. But I miss you too. I miss having someone to talk to, someone who listens. I just need time. Please understand. I don't know what I want right now, but I'm not giving up on us. I just need to find myself again." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The response came almost immediately. "I understand, Emma. And I'm not going anywhere. Take all the time you need. I'll be here, waiting for you when you're ready." Emma set the phone down, her heart racing. It wasn't an answer, but it was enough. It was enough to know that she didn't have to figure everything out at once. That, even in her uncertainty, she wasn't alone. Over the next few days, Emma took small steps forward. She began volunteering at the local animal shelter, a place she had always loved. Working with the dogs, helping them find homes, gave her a sense of purpose. It reminded her of the love she had shared with Max, the unconditional bond between humans and animals. It didn't erase the pain, but it helped to fill the emptiness, little by little. And as she spent more time helping the animals, she started to feel a change inside of her. She wasn't ready to fully open her heart again, not to Tom, not to anyone, but she was starting to accept the reality that life had to go on. Max would always be a part of her. He would always be in her heart. But that didn't mean she couldn't make room for new possibilities. One afternoon, as she was sitting with a dog named Bella, a sweet golden retriever who had been abandoned, Emma's phone buzzed again. It was Tom. She smiled softly as she read his message. "Just wanted to check in. I hope you're doing well. I'm thinking of you." A small weight lifted from her shoulders. She wasn't sure where her future with Tom would lead, but she knew that whatever happened, she was taking things at her own pace. Maybe, just maybe, she was ready to start living again. It had been a month since Emma's conversation with Tom. A month since she had taken the first real steps toward healing. The emptiness she had felt when Max first passed was still there, but it wasn't as overwhelming anymore. It was more of a soft ache, a reminder of the love she had shared with him. And though the pain didn't disappear, she had come to accept that it was something she would carry with her for the rest of her life. During those weeks, Emma had found solace in the small things, taking walks, visiting the animal shelter, reading books in quiet moments. It wasn't a grand transformation, but it was progress. She wasn't the same person she had been before the wedding, before the grief. But she was learning to be okay with that. She was learning that healing wasn't about returning to who she was before. It was about finding a new version of herself, one that could hold the love of the past while still moving forward into the future. Tom had continued to reach out, each message filled with patience and understanding. He hadn't pushed her, never once asked her to make a decision or rush her healing. And slowly, that had begun to change something in her. He wasn't just waiting for her to heal, he was supporting her through it. One evening, after a long day at the shelter, Emma received another message from Tom. But this time, it was different. There was an invitation. "Hey Emma, I've been thinking. There's a park nearby, and I thought maybe we could meet up tomorrow. Just for a walk. No pressure. I'd really like to see you." She stared at the message for a long time, her finger hovering over the reply button. Her heart raced. Was she ready for this? A part of her was terrified to take that next step. But another part of her, a part that had been buried beneath all the grief, felt a flutter of excitement. She typed back, her hands shaking slightly, "I'd like that. Let's meet tomorrow." The next afternoon, Emma arrived at the park, her heart beating a little faster than usual. It was a beautiful day, sunlight filtering through the trees, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves. As she walked along the path, she spotted Tom sitting on a bench, a soft smile on his face as he looked up at her. For a moment, time seemed to slow. Emma was flooded with emotions, nostalgia, fear, hope, and a strange sense of calm. She was nervous, but she was also ready. Ready to see Tom again. Ready to take that next step forward, even if it felt uncertain. She walked toward him, her steps slow but steady, and as she reached the bench, Tom stood up to greet her. His eyes softened when he saw her, and for the first time in weeks, Emma felt like she was truly being seen. "Hi," she said quietly, her voice almost shy. "Hey, Emma," Tom replied, his tone warm. "You look good. How have you been?" "I've been okay," she said, sitting down next to him on the bench. She felt an odd sense of relief as she said the words. "I've been taking it one day at a time." Tom nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. "I'm proud of you. I know it's been hard." Emma smiled softly. "It has. But it's also been necessary. I needed to take this time to figure out what I really want. And I've realized something important." Tom raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "What's that?" "I've realized that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean I have to let go of Max or the love I had for him. It just means I have to make room for the future. And, for the first time in a long time, I'm ready to start living again." Tom's face lit up with a gentle smile. "I'm so glad to hear that, Emma. I'm not asking for anything right now. I just want to be here for you, however you need." "I know," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I'm not ready to make big decisions, but I'm ready to take things slowly. I think I need that." For a long moment, they sat in silence, just enjoying each other's company. The world around them seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them. There was no pressure, no expectation, just the simple act of being present with one another. And in that quiet moment, Emma realized something: she didn't have to have all the answers. She didn't have to know exactly where the road ahead would lead. But she was ready to take the next step, however small it might be. She was ready to let herself heal and grow, to embrace whatever came next, without fear. The next few weeks passed in a blur of simple moments. Emma and Tom continued to meet at the park, taking long walks and talking. At first, their conversations had been cautious, almost tentative, but slowly they found their rhythm again. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a mutual respect for each other's space, for each other's journey. Emma still wasn't sure what the future held, but being with Tom again felt easier than she had expected. It was like slipping into an old, familiar jacket, comfortable, but with new awareness. In the evenings, Emma would reflect on the day, her thoughts often drifting to maximum. She had visited the shelter more frequently, helping the animals, especially the ones who had been abandoned or who had suffered in ways that reminded her of what Max had gone through before his passing. There were days when she felt like she was drowning in the memories: Max's wagging tail, the way his nose would press against the window when he was waiting for her to come home. But in the same breath, there was also a quiet comfort in knowing that those memories would always be with her. They had become a part of her. One Saturday afternoon, Emma decided to do something she hadn't done in months. She went to the place where Max had been laid to rest. It was a small park on the outskirts of the city, peaceful and untouched, with flowers blooming in the spring air. As she walked toward the spot where she had said her final goodbye, her heart ached once more. She had been putting off this visit for so long, telling herself that she wasn't ready, but now, as she stood there in the soft afternoon sunlight, she felt like she had come full circle. She knelt by the small stone that marked Max's grave and placed a bouquet of wildflowers she had picked along the way. She spoke to him softly, her voice filled with love and gratitude. "Max, I miss you every day. But I want you to know that I'm okay. I've been healing. I'm not forgetting you, not ever. You were the best friend I could have ever asked for. And I will always love you." Tears welled up in her eyes as she let herself grieve once more, but this time, it was different. It wasn't a grief that threatened to swallow her whole. It was a grief that felt gentle, a sorrow that came with a sense of peace. She had loved Max, and she would always love him. But she also knew that it was time to keep moving forward. After a few quiet moments, Emma stood up and took a deep breath. She looked around at the park, feeling a sense of calm wash over her. For the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe fully again. When she arrived back at her apartment, Tom was waiting for her. They had planned to meet for dinner, something simple but meaningful. As she entered the apartment, she was surprised to see him standing by the window, looking out at the city skyline. He turned when he heard her footsteps, his eyes soft and full of warmth. "How was your visit?" Tom asked gently, his voice low. It was good, Emma replied, a small smile playing on her lips. I think it was what I needed. It helped me let go, just a little. I'm glad, Tom said, stepping toward her. I know it hasn't been easy. But I want you to know that you don't have to do this alone. You never have to do it alone. Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. She wasn't sure where their relationship was headed, but she was beginning to understand that it didn't matter right now. What mattered was the support they were offering each other, the way they were both allowing each other to heal at their own pace. She smiled softly at him. Thank you, Tom, for being patient with me, for understanding. I know I've asked a lot from you. Tom reached out and gently took her hand. You don't have to thank me. I'm here for you, always. And for the first time since Max's death, Emma allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could have a future with Tom again. She wasn't in any rush to jump into it, but she was beginning to see that the love they had shared was not something that needed to be rushed or forced. It could grow again, at its own pace, when the time was right. The months that followed were a quiet testament to the power of healing. Emma had come a long way since that day at the wedding hall when Max had blocked her path, forcing her to confront the pain she had been running from. She had faced the grief, the heartbreak, and the uncertainty of her future. And while she wasn't the same person she had been before, she had learned something vital. Healing wasn't about forgetting, it was about learning to live alongside the pain. Her relationship with Tom had evolved too. Slowly, they found their way back to each other. There were no grand gestures, no declarations of love that came too soon. Instead, there were small moments that built a bridge between them, shared cups of coffee in the mornings, laughter over simple things, and the gentle, reassuring touch of a hand when words weren't enough. It was a love that had been tested, but it was stronger for it. Emma still visited Max's grave from time to time. Each visit was a quiet conversation, a moment of remembrance. But those visits didn't carry the same weight they once did. She had made peace with his passing. She had made peace with herself. And as the days grew longer and the seasons shifted, Emma found herself standing at the edge of something new. She wasn't sure where life was taking her, but she knew she was no longer the person who had walked into that wedding hall months ago. She had survived the storm, and though the scars remained, they no longer defined her. One evening, after a long walk in the park with Tom, Emma stood looking out at the sunset. It was a perfect evening, the sky painted with hues of pink and orange. Tom stood beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his presence. I never thought I'd get here, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't think I'd be okay. You're okay, Emma, Tom replied softly. And you're not alone. Not anymore. She turned to him and smiled, her heart full of a quiet, steady happiness. I know. And I'm ready. Ready for whatever comes next. As they stood there, watching the sunset together, Emma felt the weight of everything that had happened, but she also felt a sense of peace. Life wasn't perfect. There would be more challenges ahead. But for the first time in a long time, Emma felt like she could face whatever came her way, with Tom by her side and the love she had once thought lost forever still burning quietly in her heart. It wasn't the ending she had expected, but it was the beginning of something new, something beautiful, something worth waiting for. And as they walked away, side by side, the future no longer seemed so uncertain. It felt like a place where hope, love, and healing could all exist together, in perfect harmony. As Emma and Tom walked into the future, hand in hand, they knew that healing was not a destination, but a journey. And though the road had been painful, it had led them to this place, this quiet, beautiful moment where they could finally breathe, knowing that their love was strong enough to withstand anything. Life had its ups and downs, its joys and sorrows, but with hope in their hearts and the lessons of the past guiding them, they were ready for whatever came next. This story is a reminder that no matter how deep the wounds, time, love, and self-compassion can heal even the most broken hearts. Emma's journey shows us that it's okay to take things slow, to grieve, and to grow. And that sometimes, the most beautiful parts of life come when we least expect them. If you found this story inspiring, if it touched your heart, or if it gave you the courage to move forward in your own journey, remember, you're not alone. The future is full of possibilities, and healing is always within reach. For more emotional, heartwarming stories that uplift, inspire, and remind us that love and hope can heal all wounds, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more tales that will leave you with hope in your heart and a smile on your face. Sparkles. Let's walk this journey together.